Russia's Geopolitics and Its Economy by Daniel Qatar for Geography 6. Russia is one of the largest countries in the world, spanning from Eastern Europe all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Russia is a big political player in the region and has an effect on all the countries it borders. Historically, the USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics that included Russia, was one of the superpowers of the 20th century. Since the Yalta Conference at the end of World War II, the tensions between the Americans and the Soviets were very apparent. This was the start of the Cold War between the US and the USSR, which considered itself the counterbalance to Western power. The two powers engaged in several proxy wars, including the Arab-Israeli Wars, the wars in Korea, Vietnam, and the Iranian crisis. They were vying for spheres of influence and spread into Europe with NATO and the Warsaw Pact. With the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, it was split into 15 sovereign republics, one of which was Russia. This led to Russia losing its sphere of influence and the US affirming itself as a world superpower. This sets the stage for the current Russian geopolitical decisions. Vladimir Putin, the current president of Russia and a former KGB spy, believes that Russia should be a power in Eastern Europe and the world. However, since 1991, Eastern European countries have become more westernized and many have joined the European Union. Ukraine, however, the country on Russia's eastern border, has been predominantly close to the government in Moscow. On February 22, 2014, President Viktor Yanukovych, who was supported by Putin, was voted out by parliament. This came after several days of large protests by the Ukrainian population. This meant that Russia had lost a key ally. Since Russia has no geographic border in the east, it had also lost its geographic buffer from the west. Soon after this occurred, Russia mobilized troops and moved into the Crimea region in southern Ukraine. They moved in to secure air bases as well as government facilities and buildings.
This does look like an armored personnel carrier, suggesting the Russian military is directly involved with the attempted takeover of this Ukrainian air base.
They also instigated pro-Russian protests in the local population. After high tensions with the Ukrainian government and military, the Russian government conducted a referendum, considered illegal by many countries, that voted to annex Crimea to the Russian state. The annexation of Crimea by Russia was not well received by the US, the European Union, and many other countries globally. These actions resulted in the EU and the US in issuing sanctions targeting any person or organization that was involved in denying Ukraine its sovereign rights. This included many high-ranking government and military officials, heads of energy firms, and bank owners. Most of the targeted individuals were in Putin's inner circle, while Putin himself was not sanctioned, so as not to end diplomatic relations between these countries and Russia. These sanctions consist of freezing their assets abroad, as well as setting up a travel ban. For the banks and energy companies, these sanctions have shut out the Western market, eliminating funding for many projects and oil digs. The sanctions and the drop in the price of an oil barrel from $107 in July 2014 to around $48 today has been very bad for the Russian oil industry. And since around half of Moscow's government revenues is from the oil sector, the Russian economy has not performed very well recently. This has led to a drop of the ruble against the dollar of 20% in 2015 and of around 44% the year before. 2014 was not the end of the sanctions directed at Russia. In the 2016 presidential elections, Russia was considered to have intentionally interfered with the US elections.
Tonight, there is growing evidence that Russia is using WikiLeaks as a delivery vehicle for hacked emails and other information.
After the loss of Hillary in November, the Obama administration decided to tighten sanctions on Russia for their political interference. This led to the implementation of new sanctions, in addition to the old ones, as well as targeting a wider group of people involved. With a new Trump administration in place, it will be very interesting to see how the severity of these sanctions will be affected, and how the fluid relationship with Russia will evolve. Russia's future geopolitical moves will definitely be critical in terms of the survival of its economy.